Welcome to Lifting Your Spirit, a monthly broadcast in which we interview people about their spiritual lives and how they support others in lifting their spirit. I'm Reverend Joel Grossman, interfaith minister, director of spiritual services for Constellation Hospice here in Newburyport, and offer spiritual direction, coaching on a donation basis virtually.
I'm Ted Jones. I'm an Insight Meditation teacher at North Shore Insight Meditation Community.
Our show is based on the four following principles. One, everybody is spiritual. Sometimes we are conscious and active in our spiritual lives, sometimes not, but even when we're not, we still are spiritual.
Second, that there are many ways to lift your spirit, not only through religious practices, but also through other activities, nature, art, human relationships, service to others, just to name a few.
Third, everybody's spiritual path is unique to them and may change in small or large ways over time.
And fourth, that it's important to have confidence and to respect your own spiritual journey, trusting that it will unfold one step at a time, and also to be respectful of other people's spiritual journeys, the uniqueness of them, even though it may be much different from yours. Mm-hmm. We're not here to try to convince you of any particular technique or method, but rather just to offer some food for thought.
And we're very pleased to have as our guest today Manny Muros, who I know from years back when he was running the Newburyport Yoga Center, and he's gone on to some pretty remarkable things since, which you hear about now. So Manny, welcome.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Ted. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. We start our shows always with asking our guests to just talk about their spiritual journey through their life. So let us know.
Begin with that. It's been quite a roller coaster, I'm sure, like most of us. I was born in Cuba, and my family was religious, not overly religious in Cuba, which was more Catholic, and they really weren't. But there was always a sense of faith. My grandfather on my mother's side, he was known like a real deep, faithful person. One of the stories I cherished about him was that he was a cattle rancher. And he had these beautiful cows that he was very proud of, I think a very unique herd. And they started to die. Some sort of illness came through. And he would wake up and there would be 1 and 2 and 3. And everybody was like, Rogelio, which was his name, Rogelio, oh my God, you're losing all these cows. What are you going to do? And his response was, I can only lose them because I had them. It'll be okay. It'll be solved. So I grew up with that sense of like life is okay. We just have to hold on steady. And I go back to him a lot. And it's kind of interesting that I started with that. So I was born in 59, which is when Castro took over Cuba. I describe it in my autobiography part of my book. I felt I was born into paradise. A family that was very well-to-do, with farms, country clubs, beach houses, and as a little boy, it was all love and joy and beauty. And I didn't realize that world was crumbling for my parents because everything shifted. Mine didn't. And then we had to leave Cuba. so it was a huge loss because everything, my world was left behind. And part of the story, and I'll go on this because it's a theme through my life. So we left everything behind.
And how old were you at
I
that
was 7.
point? Wow. Okay. So you really knew what was happening.
I knew and I didn't know.
Yeah.
Because very loving parents really tried to protect the youngest, me. I have an older sister. And I realize now how oblivious I was to reality because they did a good job. So my dad bought tickets on Iberian Airlines, and it's a big process to leave Cuba. We weren't allowed to take anything. Communist regime, everything was bungled down by the time we left, which was in '67. And when we get to the airport, they said to my father, "You're going on a Habana Airlines plane, 4-propeller, from Havana to Madrid." So the jet would have been, 6-hour flight. This is now supposed to be like a 14-hour flight.
Ooh.
And my father was, that's not what I bought. I want, my actual ticket. And basically soldiers with guns said, "You have two choice. You can stay or you can board the plane. We don't care." So we obviously boarded the plane, take off in the middle of the Atlantic, 1967. We enter a hurricane. They did not know. The plane was not capable of basically going through that, but we were halfway. There was no turning back. The pilot decided to try to go beyond its capacity to try to get on top of the hurricane. And we did, to the point of calling Mayday, air masks, the plane just shaking right through the whole process. And we made it to the Azores Islands, where we did an emergency landing. And so again, 7 years old, you leave your country and you go through this intense trauma.
Yeah.
Then we did get on another plane, and we went to Madrid. And I love Madrid. It really felt like a beautiful space, unaware of the emotional challenges my parents were facing. My father was able to smuggle out money into a bank account, and he had no idea if it actually even existed, because he was trusting that somebody in the embassy or a pilot would put money into a number account. So I remember, going to the bank and my father with a little piece of paper, a number, and like praying that it existed, to find out that it did. And his relief of like, we will be at least okay for this moment. And then just under a year after, we arrived into the United States. Another hardship, because in their desire to support us, my parents kept saying, probably even to themselves, once we get to America, it'll be wonderful. We have our uncle there, and we'll start a new life, and it's going to be beautiful. And I arrived, JFK, to beautiful, and I'm being sarcastic, Union City, New Jersey, which was basically a very rough working class, where we were literally a block away from the regional bus depot maintenance center. And I remember waking up the next day and stepping out, and I'm like, where are we? This is not the right place. Completely shattered of what was this, no language that I could speak. It was a rough neighborhood. There was no refinement. I was bullied as a little kid from another country. It was way before bilingual education. We were early immigrants into the area. So it was really a tough time. A tough time. Always love and harmony at home, but really a whole sense that the outer world was not safe. And I'm saying that because all those things, as you both know, shape our energetics. I don't know, should I just continue?
Oh, please.
Sure.
Yeah.
So finally we got our well, I should say that. So within a year, I mean, my father was amazing. Within a year, he was able to buy a photography shop. And that was what my grandfather had done, part of one of his businesses in Cuba. So within a year, he actually had his own business.
Wow.
And we were renting an apartment on a second floor, just a few storefronts from where he had rented to do his Photoshop. We were all, well, my parents were asleep. I think it was like a Saturday night, Friday night, and I wasn't allowed to be up so late, but I started watching TV beyond my bedtime. And somewhere in I don't know what time, maybe 11, 12, I shut off the TV to go to sleep, and I hear like steps or rumbling on outside the stairwell, and I'm thinking, wow, somebody's breaking in. What's going on? Again, I was probably 8, 9. I'm very bad with dates. I called out to my parents, hey, there's something going on. What's going on? So my dad rushes over. We walk toward the front door to find it engulfed in flames.
Oh my God.
We couldn't get to, it was, typical apartment. That was
Yeah.
a row thing. So the bedrooms was on one side, the kitchen and the emergency stairs was on the other side. So we were trapped on the side of the apartment that we couldn't get to the emergency stairs. So we literally had to be pulled out by firemen from the window down ladders. And the theme, and once again, everything we owned lost. Practice on detachment.
Yeah. Wow.
It was arson. We believed that there was an issue with the retail tenant, and he had no problem knowing that there were two families actually burning the building in the middle of the night. He was never caught. Everybody just assumed it was alcohol, running down the stairwells. So again, that happens, and there's always a blessing. My dad was renting, as I said, a couple of storefronts below. The owner of that building basically said, she was an older woman, I think Russian, and she said, you need a home. Would you like to buy that building? And we did. And that was actually the beginning of at least my parents getting some roots. And then she decided that the neighborhood was a little rough for her, and decided to sell the rest of the buildings she owned. She almost owned half a block, which opened the door for another uncle that had just arrived, who was a medical doctor, who purchased that building and put his medical practice there. And again, slowly a community began to unfold. but again, a sense of detachment that was big. I ended up moving to Boston to go to college. I went to Mass College of Pharmacy. Never practiced, by the way. No. I went to Mass College of Pharmacy, and I found my high school sweetheart at 15, and because her mom was actually very, very conservative, very traditional. When it was time for my wife to come to college, she wouldn't let her leave the house because she wasn't married. And she didn't get the concept that a college in Boston might be a little better than a community college. So we negotiated with our parents and said, we need your support. Can we get married? We'll go to school, but this is the only way she can come. And she came to Emmanuel College. So I got married at 18, a year before my 19th birthday. Mariana was 17. I became her legal guardian. and we did undergrad together. And Boston was actually fresh air. I finally felt like there was a path. I could see a sense of I could rebuild my life, because that's really what I always had this sense like I can't recover to get back what I had from Cuba, and there was a whole sense of the need to have that American dream rebuilt again. And I realized that I really felt like my future was stolen. I had that story in my head, that really played for a long time. So to sort of speed things up a little bit, because again it leads to a loss and the awakening. I was just on a roll to be successful, and again went through pharmacy school. While I was in pharmacy school with a friend of ours, we started a small business of importing plants from Puerto Rico, from his family, and it was very easily, we actually pre-sold a whole bunch of containers, and it was owned by his uncle, and he basically asked us if we wanted to do this. And as two young guys, we sold to the Flower Exchange, to Market Basket, and we basically set up all these contracts that we were going to make $100,000 in 1980 something each a year, and it was like this sense of wow, this is easy, and being very arrogant. At that age, I was like, I make more money than my professors. Why do I want to practice pharmacy? But the uncle took all those contracts and sold the company to someone else, saying it has all this potential. Those contracts were never executed, and we made nothing. And I keep saying this because there are lessons. So I actually found an extremely rich person who didn't care about the ripples, the damage he was causing. He basically cheated his nephew out of it, let alone me. And there was no remorse. It was just business, which was very contrary to how my family did business in Cuba, where you actually were responsible in your community. My dad paid medical bills for his people, his staff, everything. And I grew up hearing that wisdom of the elders, the Cuban elders, and the sense of duty and basically ethics, morals. And when I entered the business world here, at least I wasn't finding those people. So
Now, you, in your bio, said that you had a spiritual awakening in your mid-30s. So could you say a little bit about that?
Yep. So right out of college, pretty much, with that entrepreneurial mindset, I started a transportation company that contracted with the state and did special needs transportation in the city of Boston. And I was able to get again, this is 77, 82, this is 83, 84, 85 maybe. I ended up with a contract of over 600,000 at that time to transport students, and within a year I had over $1 million in contracts, employees, vehicles. And I kind of felt like, whoa, again, life was good. Started making very good money. Bought a house on High Street here in Newburyport with the idea of having our kids. This is all part of the setting up. So without any kids, we bought a 14-room High Street house so that we could grow our family.
Plenty of room for growth there.
It's kind of, you got to set the picture. And the business kept growing, got involved into another business, a real estate opportunity in Boston, right on Mass Ave. And I've tried to shorten this, but we thought that there was this tremendous potential that was going to happen from it. And it ended up becoming a nightmare. By that time, as moving quickly, I had actually moved already into Amesbury on the river. And I went from that 14-room, 5,000 square foot home to a 10,000 square foot home, 17-room state on the Merrimack River. Again, at that time we had 2 children, 2 boys. And in the middle of this expansion, everything collapsed. We were supposed to be, we started on a business that didn't work. I'm really giving you the shortest, the tightest thing. And I found myself with, by the time it all collapsed, with 3 kids in private schools, this massive lifestyle, and 0 income. And I couldn't figure myself out of that. Intellectually, and obviously the recognition of what are we going to do. So I walked to a church, an empty church. I sat on the pew, and I basically said, God, I give up. I don't know what to do. Please help me. Keep my family safe. Show us a way out. I knew all the creditors, everything was going to come after us. And I remember the words that I think made all the difference. One was the surrender. And the other one was, God, I know all about you, but I don't know you. And all these things, all that I acquired, they don't matter to me. What I want to do is that I want to get to know you. And at that moment, I felt this energy. It was almost like this massive hug, an energetic hug. And this peace that I don't think I had ever felt in my life. And I just started to cry by myself. And at that moment, illogically, I felt like it was all going to be okay. Like I had no idea how, possibly we would get out of that hole, but it was all going to be okay. And it was. We never filed for bankruptcy. Things shifted and turned. My wife at the time, she had quit her job to work on our businesses, and she called her old boss and said, by the way, is there an opportunity? And he's told her what was going on. He goes, yeah, you can start tomorrow. and then her salary like doubled and doubled. And all of a sudden there was just enough that could happen. So there was the universe took care of us, let me put it that way. At that time, I was introduced to the Course in Miracles. And I picked it up. I started to read it. I couldn't put it down. I spent all night just reading it and feeling the same energy that I had felt on the pew. And at that moment, I did not want to leave that space at all.
And for our viewers who don't know about the Course in Miracles, can you just give a little description?
Of course, the Course in Miracles, I think, may go back to possibly even the 70s, and it's considered to be channel material from Jesus Christ. It was channeled, or I should say, channeled to one and written down by another. Very interesting. One was, I believe they were atheist psychologists in New York City, and she started to hear voices and basically said to the other psychologist, I don't know what's going on. And he said, well, why don't we write this down? And basically the Course in Miracles is actually 3 books that usually gets presented as one, all channel material. And my phrase of it is Christ basically saying, I was there 2,000 years ago, and my message has been so distorted. This is what I actually said. And it comes with 365 meditations to take you into the state of awakening that he invited us to experience. So I did those 365 lessons at that time. And I went into a dive of 2.5 years, 12 to 18 hours a day of meditation, of reading, of study. I did not want to leave that energetics. I entered a completely different consciousness state. I think my wife was like, I was happy, I was joyful, even if I may have been crazy in her mind. She didn't think I needed to be institutionalized, but it was rough because I became another person. That's why I called my first book The Other Side of Me.
You show that?
Oh, sure. It's The Other Side of Me because I really felt that a part of me died and another one evolved.
Which is a very important and common theme in sort of the mystical path of dying before you die.
Yes.
It's frequently the way it's phrased, and that sounds like exactly your experience there.
Exactly. I mean, I felt bad for her. She kept waiting for me to come back, and I kind of had, at one point said, that all me just doesn't exist anymore. And then I decided to purchase the Yoga Center of Newburyport, which was going bankrupt. And that was the last straw. It's like, oh, so now you want to buy a bankrupt yoga center with no potential. And it was the place where actually I could be me. It was the beginning of actually being barefoot, being grounded, being with loving people, being authentic. I could shed that whole other life.
And had you been
yeah.
practicing yoga? That
That's
was,
what I was gonna ask.
I had the whole awakening before doing anything yoga without walking. One of my friends introduced me to Kate Wolf, who owned the yoga center, and I remember Kate walking in and saying, "This is the path of awakening," and me saying to myself, "No, it isn't. This has nothing to do with awakening. It feels good for my body, but this is not it." But it got me grounded. It got me back into my physical body. And now when I teach yoga, I use yoga, but I teach it as that, how to embody the spirit, the consciousness that we are, in a way that gives us alignment and integrity. So because of my unusual path, I found that I've been teaching my whole time from another perspective. Like, I don't doubt we are consciousness. I know we are light. I see energy. The hard part is how to be human. Right?
yes.
So all the tools are really about how do we integrate and live in this world. So and I'm going to follow, because part of what came to me, and this is my second book, so I'll show it a little bit. It's called The Mind Overlay. When I became awakened, in that energetic field, if I went out, I realized that the little kids, they were seeing what I was seeing. The little kids and I were in the same plane, and I could see the adults walking around like zombies. They were just living in the constructs of their mind. And in the yoga teachings, they talk about Maya and the illusion of life. And I never found that useful terminology, because are you going to tell me this is an illusion, that this doesn't exist, when everything else is telling me that it's real? So what I really understand is that the reality is here, and we place this overlay over reality, which is all the conditioning we've had since the day we were born. And we're functioning through that conditioning unconsciously. So we barely ever actually live in the moment, in what we're experiencing. So that's a key point now of my teachings. Can we really grasp that at all times you're seeing life from only one perspective, yours, and it's built on everything that you've picked up along the way.
This is, it seems very similar to a Buddhist concept of self as something that we make rather than something that we are, and that from that it creates this sort of story of me that then becomes a filter for everything.
Right.
And in the Christian, my uncle was a famous Christian spiritual teacher, Father Thomas Keating, and that he talked, a couple of things really resonate. One was prayer is a relationship with God, and another was kind of bringing the concept of kenosis, or self-emptying, from the monastery into kind of daily life, trying to teach that to people, and to sort of be able to live in the presence of God, rather than the kind of separation that you're talking about.
Right. And I have to say, it's been, as I'm sure the same with you, it's a lifetime of refining, because we have very deep patterns that really distort our reality. I always find if an emotion shows up, I know it's a story. So at least it rings a bell, and a big part of what I like to emphasize and really hold is that we have to cultivate the observer. the witness. Without an observer, you're dead in the water.
Yeah.
You know, once you have the observer, then at least you can stand back and interpret
Right.
what we're doing in this moment.
Yeah.
How am I relating?
Yeah. With that, you have choice. Without it, you have no choice. It's just, this is how it is.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So let me just kind of get a sense of how this maybe is playing out for you in real time in what we're living in our culture right now. So in two ways. One is that you were an immigrant, and so you are now witnessing all the stuff that's going on with that, and you are a victim of fires, and you know that's going on right now. You know you can't avoid it, and so how is that stuff processed for you? And the sense of, I mean, I think before this we were talking about, you know, aspirational, you know, can you live in an awakened state all the time, or is it, you know, something that, well, if you can even be there part of the time, that's great, but and that things may kind of draw you out, then you have to kind of review it, you know, sort of look at it in a different way. So I'm just curious about those really topical areas, how that is for you.
So let me. I always have to do that. I always have to put it into a box to explain where we're coming from. So so for me, I find that because we have a mind and we actually have to function to our personality, the most important thing is to have a box, a mind overlay that sort of is closer to reality, that allows us to sort of filter our experiences from that point. So in my box, I know this is Earth School. I know that we're here for the growth that our soul came here to do. And it allows me to, again, sit back in the observer with not a lot of attachment. So this is reality. It is not a mistake. We have souls of different levels of evolution needing different lessons for their own evolution. And we're vibratory beings because of the level of vibration that we carry is how we attract realities and how we repel other realities that just don't fit with us. So I you know, that allows me to sort of accept that life is difficult, that there are extremely difficult challenges that we go through. And through the years of doing my work, no one has a free ride. No one has a free ride. People may present that they're fine, but we're not living inside them. So the sense of, I mean, I do feel that our modern society worldwide is so out of alignment that it needs to crumble somehow. And we are in the process of observing that. We have to evolve as humans, and usually we don't evolve unless there's a challenge, right? Because we're just stuck in our patterns, and if the patterns are comfortable, we don't move. There's no need to evolve.
Right.
You know, so I really see that the planet, Mother Earth, the divine, are really squeezing us to connect to what is real, of value, and is each other, and is community. Do you know what I'm saying? So every time one of these catastrophes happen, we come together, and we remember. That's how I make sense of that. I mean, I was hoping for a different result in the election, but I kept saying, but we're going to get what we need.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, because our time is getting short, I want to make sure that we get in a couple of applications you seem to have manifested to apply your insights. And one is the Montessori Charter School, first in Massachusetts, and the other is Alnoba Peace Foundation. So if you could say something about what you're doing in those areas.
Well, both of those are now in my past. It was just an amazing time to be part of the parent group that created the charter school. Montessori is very much about following the child, and it's very pure in my sense of like we're involved with our own unique gifts, and we're not here to indoctrinate the kids. We're actually here to help them blossom and become that. And I felt that I played a big part in getting the board to make that the priority, not the part that we were a charter school and we owe something to the state. We were able to owe everything to the children, and we'll deal with the state if they don't like it later. And it worked out. The school is very successful. It's doing fine, and it was just a privilege to be there. One of the examples is we had Robert's Rules, and as the vice chair of the board, I was responsible for the health of the board. And I basically said, that's fine, but from now on, all decisions have to be unanimous, and everybody gets a voice, because if one of us has an objection, they're seeing something I can't see. So I want you to explain why you are objecting, and if you can convince us, we go, and if not, we're going to convince you, and you go with us. But you can't just object. We want to learn from each other.
Consensus decision making.
Consensus decision making, and everybody thought I was crazy, and I go, no, we're going to hold on to that.
Yeah.
And it was great because it got us closer. And the piece of Alnoba, I was very good friends with Alan. I'm blanking out of his name. Happens with my age. Well, with Alan, it's a family foundation, the Alnoba Foundation, the Alan Lewis family. And Alan is very much about leaders and leadership, and donated money all over the world for people who are trying to make a change, very much activist. And one day I was with Alan, and there were a whole bunch of activists, very wound up in their mind overlay activism. And I said, Alan, we need better humans. This is fighting against fighting. This isn't going to help. And he smiled and said, all right, Manny, you handle making better humans. Why don't you create something here at Alnoba for your teachings? And that became the Alnoba Peace Foundation. And it was mostly me teaching.
Yeah. And describe where it is
Alnoba
and how people can make use of it.
Well, Alnoba, it's sad, is in Kensington, New Hampshire. Yeah. Alan passed away about 2 years ago. And when he passed away, everything sort of disintegrated. So the Peace Foundation, it is not there. The land exists. They do have a training center, but it just dissolved. Even my role there dissolved. I have without truly even any communication. Which was kind of sad. It was, but like everything in my life, the universe gives me something, and then it says it's time to move on.
And where are you teaching now?
Yeah.
And how can people access you if they want to go to a retreat or
okay,
another?
So I'm mostly teaching online. They can go to my website, ManuelJoseMuros.com, or if you put even MannyMuros.com, it'll take you there. And I'm running a retreat in Spain in May. I am teaching a class over at the UU Church, just workshops. So I'm mostly just doing
You
online.
church in Newburyport?
In Newburyport, yes.
Fantastic. When are you doing that?
March 1st, Saturday morning, 10 to 12:30. And I'll do what I call more of a complete practice, which will do a bit of yoga to get that centering, then a meditation. And my wife is a composer and a pianist, and she'll actually play through the meditation. And it's just a way to get into what I call into the light. It's really dropping into the pure state being.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So on that note, and finishing up, could you share a recommendation for how people can lift their spirits?
It's counterintuitive, but it's finding your joy. I feel that joy is the North Star of our heart, and many times it's illogical, but that's what the mind is there for. If we acknowledge what gives us joy, then use your intellect to move toward that joy. Instead of remaining stuck in our likes and dislikes and in our beliefs, trust that there's an inner knowing. We feel joy when more life force moves through us, and more life force moves through us when we are aligned with our soul's purpose. So that's what I would say. And sometimes we think that we need to be special or things need to be big, and it's not about that. It's about being real. It's about being authentic, and that's when we feel joy.
Thank you. Anything in reference?
No, I just want to thank you. This was really wonderful speaking with you today and getting a sense of your life and the perspective and the deep sense of spirituality that you bring.
Well, thank you. Thank both
Thank
of
you
you.
so much, Manny.
I appreciate this.
And thank you, viewers and listeners, and hope you come back again for next month's program.